And good morning once again, my brothers and sisters. Thank you for attending another Living Hope Today study. Here we are in Genesis chapter 35. Now, as this lays out, we're going to get to the end of 35 today. We're going to spend 36 looking at the family tree of Esau, Jacob's brother, son of Isaac. The Bible has a lot to say about his family tree. But until then, we see Jacob moving south to see his father before his father dies. But on the way, there's just all kinds of trouble. It seems that even if you're a patriarch, life still comes to get you from time to time, and we'll see that today. Watch this. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked with him and poured out a drink offering on it. And he also poured oil on it. Where are we now? We're in Bethel. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel, the house of God. This is where God has told Jacob to go. Jacob is there. He's worshiping God on the altar. He's setting up a pillar. But the story moves from there. Then they moved on from Bethel. They're going south. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. We haven't even been told she's pregnant, but here the story just stops in the travel plan and says, wait a minute, you need to know this. Rachel's having a baby, and it's not an easy birth. In fact, as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, don't be afraid, for you have another son. Again, this would be Rachel's second son. She's sort of bringing up the rear when it comes to giving sons to Jacob. We'll see that again in a second, but the midwife makes sure she understands that the baby is a boy, and then we're taken to the pain of the moment as she breathed her last. So as Rachel's giving birth, she's dying. For she was dying. She named her son Ben-Oni. That means son of my trouble. But his father, that would be Jacob, named him Benjamin. That means son of my right hand. So this little baby boy is known as Benjamin throughout the rest of Scripture, even though as his mother dies giving birth to him, she names him Ben-Oni. Okay, so we've had death on the trip. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. So they're moving south. They're south of Jerusalem. We'll see that on a map in a minute. But they're going to Bethlehem. Over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day, that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. If you've been following along over the last several weeks, you see that Jacob builds a pillar almost every time something significant happens, and here it is again, a monument, a place to remember what has happened. All right, and this is where Rachel is buried. She's not buried with the family. She's not buried up north where her father lives, Laban. No, she's not buried down south where her father-in-law lives, Isaac. No, she's buried of all the family alone in the Bethlehem region. All right. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. Now, this is a name you might want to pay attention to. This Migdal, I believe, means tower. There's a tower between Bethlehem and Jerusalem where it's been used as a lookout post. This is the area where Israel, notice, is not called Jacob now. God's strength, Israel, is now pitching his tent in the Bethlehem region, okay? While Israel was living in that region, can you believe this? Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah. Now, if you remember, Reuben is the firstborn of Jacob through his wife Leah. Reuben has been around since Jacob started having kids, and now he's old enough, apparently, to engage his, what would we call her? It's not her stepmom, It's his mother's maidservant. Yeah, well, it's really Rachel's maidservant, but okay, whatever you want to call it. There it is. And notice that Israel heard of it. And notice that once again, we just blow past this family upheaval and tragedy. Remember when Shechem was destroyed by Simeon and Levi because Dinah was raped. When Jacob hears the news of Dinah's rape, he really has no response in the text. Now he hears the news that his firstborn son Reuben has slept with his concubine, it would be. No response. No response from Jacob. All right, now the text will have a response, and we'll get to that in a minute. Let's just go through the genealogy one more time. The sons of Leah, Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel has Joseph and Benjamin. Rachel's maidservant Bilhah has Dan of Naphtali. And the sons of Leah's maidservant Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Haran. All right, well, we know that Benjamin wasn't born in Padan Haran. Benjamin was born on the way to Bethlehem. But just to help you understand how this breach by Reuben is viewed in Scripture, we'll go to First Chronicles 5 for a second. The sons of Reuben, this is the listing of the sons, right? He was the firstborn of Israel, that's Jacob. He was the firstborn. But when he defiled his father's marriage bed, his rights as firstborn were given to the sons of Joseph, son of Israel. So he could not be listed in the genealogical record in accordance with his birthright. When we get to Genesis 49, I think it is, we'll see that Jacob or Israel refuses to bless Reuben as his firstborn. And though Judah was the strongest of his brothers and a ruler came from him, the rights of the firstborn belonged to Joseph. That's further commentary on what Reuben has done here in chapter 35 of Genesis. Back to Genesis, though, we read this. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. So now Jacob's all the way south. We'll see this in a second. And then we're told Isaac lived 180 years. Okay, what happened after that? He breathed his last and he died. He was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Okay, so in the last few chapters, we've seen quite a few changes. And now we've seen Abraham's gone, Sarah's gone, Isaac's gone, Rebekah's gone, and now Jacob's love of his life, Rachel, is gone. We've also seen 12 sons added to Jacob, which will become the 12 tribes of Israel. But just to give you some context about where we are in the book, let's look at the map one more time. You remember up here, if you can see that, it's Bethel. This is where Jacob meets with God. All right, and then he travels down south to Bethlehem. That's where Rachel gives birth to Benjamin, and she dies while she's doing that. She's buried there. Then Jacob travels farther south down to Mamre, or the Hebron area. Isaac dies, and he's buried there. That's the geography of what's happening in chapter 35. Now, let's look at where the family tree ends up. Okay? So you remember we started with Jacob. He is given Leah through deception by his father-in-law Laban. All right, but she is like a baby-making machine. She has boys, she has boys, she has boys. She has Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Okay, then they bring in Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant. She has Dan and Naphtali. Then they bring in Zilpah. That's Leah's maidservant, and she has Gad and Asher. All right. Well, then Leah has some more. Leah has Issachar. Leah has Zebulun. And Leah has a daughter named Dinah, which we saw a couple chapters ago, being raped, violated is the word the text uses, and that caused the destruction of the whole town by Simeon and Levi. All right, well, finally, Rachel comes into the process here, and she has Joseph. He's named a gift from God. And honestly, by the time we get past Esau's genealogy in 36 and we move into 37 and learn the story of Joseph, from 37 to 50, almost the whole back half of Genesis is dedicated to the story of Joseph. So God really emphasizes this. In fact, it's one of the longest, if not the longest, story in all of Scripture. All right, Rachel, as we just saw, after all that, she has Benjamin, right? And he's called son of my distress by her. He's called son of my right hand by Jacob. The name Benjamin is the one that sticks. But then we see Rachel die. And also in this text, Reuben ends up sleeping with Bilhah. We're not really told if there's any progeny from that union, but we are told it's shameful. We are told that Reuben loses his birthright over it. And just to see Jacob as a man who's been called by God, purposed by God, one of the patriarchs that is still honored today. He has a hard life. His circumstances continue to escalate into trouble. So we shouldn't expect that when we walk with Jesus in the modern day that we should live a life that's trouble-free. We should remember from the example of the people we're studying in these Old Testament passages that there's lots of mistakes made. There's sin against each other. There's all kinds of deception going on, illegitimate sex going on, murder going on, rape. I mean, there's all kinds of chaos and trouble. Nonetheless, underneath all of it, God is moving history forward to bring us to the place where Jesus enters the world. God, even in the chaos, is accomplishing his purpose. I don't know about you, but to me, that gives me great hope that even in the messed up chaos that occurs in life, we can see, even if we can't see, we can know that God is providentially, sovereignly moving his purpose and his plan forward. And we can rest in that promise. I pray you trust him today. Serve him well, church. God bless you.